Let's transport ourselves back in time, approximately 170,000 years into the past. You are an early human ancestor, waking up on the sprawling African savanna. As you stretch and look out over the landscape to start your day, the absolute last thing on your mind is putting on a pair of pants. Yet, look at modern society today. Every single morning, billions of us wake up and put on pants, skirts, or perhaps those 3-day-old pajamas we've rebranded as loungewear just to feel somewhat intentional about our choices. Clothing is so deeply embedded in the human experience that we have literally built legal systems around the requirement to wear it. If you step outside too naked, the state will physically intervene and arrest you. We are a species with strict laws regarding our own natural state. When you pause to think about this, it is profoundly weird. Why did we do this when practically no other creature on Earth did? Wolves and dogs manage just fine without sweaters. Elephants, which possess higher intelligence than many people you probably went to school with, have never once felt the urge to tailor a jacket for themselves. While the short answer is that the exact timeline remains a bit of a mystery, the long answer is a bizarre, fascinating, and slightly gross evolutionary detective story. It involves ancient climate change, prehistoric fashion industries, and human lice. And yes, the lice part is exactly as disgusting as it sounds, but it is essential to the story. To understand the origin of clothes, we first have to address a glaring biological anomaly. Humans are practically the only large mammals on the planet that walk around almost entirely hairless. Stop and consider the sheer biodiversity around us. Gorillas, chimpanzees, lions, bears, horses, and hippos all exist in wildly different climates and environments, yet they all sport full coats of fur or hair. Then, right in the middle of all these well-covered animals, there is us. We are smooth, slightly patchy, and walking around with an evolutionary aesthetic that strongly implies we used to have a fur coat, but made some very questionable biological choices. Why do we lose our fur? The most widely accepted scientific explanation is the thermoregulation argument. As our ancient ancestors transitioned out of dense, shaded forests and into the open, sun-baked grasslands, their survival strategies had to evolve. They became endurance hunters, running long distances to exhaust their prey. If you are sprinting for miles across a sweltering savanna while wearing the equivalent of a heavy fur coat, you are facing a massive biological liability. Your core body temperature would rapidly spike, you would severely overheat, and you would likely collapse from exhaustion long before you ever caught the animal you were chasing. In the brutal math of evolution, collapsing before eating means you die hungry, which is the ultimate failure. To solve this, over hundreds of thousands of years, humans slowly shed their thick fur and replaced it with an absolute biological superpower: sweat glands. The average human body is packed with approximately 2 to 4 million sweat glands, making us elite professional-grade sweating machines. We emit moisture better than almost any other animal on Earth. This hyper-efficient cooling system is incredible during a scorching summer day. However, it is an absolute disaster when you are stranded in Central Asia. The temperature drops to 40 degrees below zero, and all you have to protect yourself is a rock and your own bare skin. This brings us to the most obvious explanation for clothing. We got cold. The conventional narrative is incredibly straightforward. A 5-year-old could easily grasp it. Humans eventually migrated out of Africa, encountered freezing climates, realized they were turning into ice cubes, and wrapped themselves in the skins of dead animals to survive. It is a neat, tidy, and perfectly logical story. The only problem is that it is completely wrong. Once you look at the timeline, the entire narrative falls apart. Modern humans did not begin migrating out of Africa in truly significant world-altering numbers until roughly 70,000 years ago. Yet genetic data reveals that humans actually started wearing clothes much earlier, somewhere between 100,000 and 170,000 years ago. If clothing was invented strictly as a desperate survival response to freezing weather, why were humans putting on garments tens of thousands of years before they ever set foot in a cold environment? The math doesn't work. Something else entirely was driving the invention of the wardrobe, something related to our social nature, rather than the ambient temperature. To pinpoint the exact era when humans started getting dressed, we have to look at the most unlikely, unsettling piece of evidence in all of evolutionary biology: the louse. Researchers at the University of Florida achieved a massive breakthrough by doing what geneticists do best: staring at microscopic things for unreasonable amounts of time. They decided to meticulously map the evolutionary family tree of human lice. Here is the crucial biology lesson. Humans are plagued by 2 distinct types of lice. Head lice make their home exclusively in the hair on our heads. Body lice, however, are entirely different. They live, breed, and thrive exclusively within the folds, seams, and fabric of clothing. They are genetically distinct from head lice, and at some specific point in ancient history, body lice evolved directly from head lice. This is a monumental piece of the puzzle because body lice absolutely cannot survive on bare human skin. They require the specific warmth, shelter, and architecture that fabric provides. Therefore, the exact moment in history when body lice genetically split from head lice is the exact moment our ancestors began wearing clothes consistently enough to accidentally create a brand new ecological habitat for a parasite. When the researchers crunched the genetic data, they discovered that this evolutionary split occurred between 83,000 and 170,000 years ago. Let that sink in. A deeply hated, panic-inducing parasitic insect, accidentally served as a biological time capsule, preserving the dawn of human fashion. The lice knew we were wearing clothes before we even knew how to write it down. So, if warmth wasn't the driving factor 170,000 years ago, what was the actual point of these early garments? The first likely explanation is remarkably boring but highly practical: physical protection. Early humans spent their days traversing rough terrain, pushing through thorny scrublands, and dealing with biting insects and relentless sun exposure. Tying a basic animal hide around the waist wasn't exactly glamorous, but it created a vital physical barrier that significantly reduced the risk of deadly infections from small cuts and scrapes. However, the second theory is far more profound. Social signaling. Humans are intensely, compulsively social creatures. We have a bone-deep obsession with hierarchy and status. We are constantly trying to broadcast our identity, our group affiliations, and our power through our posture, hairstyles, and voices. Archaeological evidence shows that our ancestors were decorating their bodies with pigments like ochre as far back as 200,000 years ago, long before the lice tell us clothing existed. The psychological desire to visually communicate something about yourself to your peers predates the actual invention of clothes. Making the cognitive leap from painting your skin to wearing a specific animal hide is a very small step. Once a human puts on a hide, they instantly begin analyzing what it means. Does wearing a leopard skin mean I'm powerful? Does it show the group that I'm a capable hunter? Suddenly, you have a small band of Homo sapiens standing around a fire on the savannah, fiercely debating who has the right to wear the best pelt. This was the birth of the fashion industry. For tens of thousands of years, fashion was incredibly crude. It likely consisted of a stiff, awkward animal skin draped over a shoulder and tied with a piece of twisted animal sinew. It was the prehistoric equivalent of wearing a heavy garbage bag. It worked, but it was incredibly ungainly. Then, roughly 50,000 years ago, a technological miracle appeared in the dirt: the bone needle. Inside Siberia's Denisova cave, archaeologists unearthed actual needles carved from hollow bird bones, complete with tiny, meticulously bored eyes for threading. This was not a tool born of brute force. This was high-level design thinking and engineering. Someone possessed the imagination to envision a tool that did not exist, crafted it without shattering the delicate bone, and used it to execute controlled, repeatable stitches. This allowed early humans to move away from awkward draping and invent fitted, tailored clothing with sewn seams that tightly sealed body heat inside. And this invention could not have come at a better time. Between 120,000 and 70,000 years ago, the Earth was battered by brutal glacial cycles. Temperatures plummeted, ice sheets grew, and vital food sources evaporated as lakes dried up. The human population practically collapsed, dwindling to a mere 10,000 to 30,000 individuals. We hovered on the razor's edge of extinction. For the bands of humans pushing north and east into Europe and Asia, the bone needle was the literal difference between life and death. Tailored clothing protected the neck and wrists, areas where blood flows close to the skin and heat is rapidly lost. Those who possessed the knowledge to stitch and layer garments survived the deep freeze, passed their skills to their children, and eventually conquered every continent on the globe. We didn't just adapt our bodies to the environment, we engineered a portable second skin. It is crucial to note that modern humans do not get to claim all the credit. This often gets conveniently ignored, but Neanderthals were creating and wearing clothing long before they ever crossed paths with us. Archaeologists have found abundant evidence of Neanderthals utilizing specialized stone tools for scraping and preparing hides, because they possessed distinct physiological adaptations to the cold, such as stockier frames and shorter limbs. They were battling extreme climates for a massive amount of time. For them, clothing wasn't an accessory, it was mandatory for survival. Furthermore, the Denisovans, a mysterious lineage of ancient humans discovered in 2010, left behind pierced and polished ornaments in the same Siberian cave where the needle was found. This points to advanced symbolic thinking and garment decoration from a species we barely know anything about. This convergence raises a fascinating point. Perhaps clothing isn't just a Homo sapiens thing. It seems that any highly intelligent, social primate forced into a harsh, freezing environment will inevitably realize that wrapping themselves up is the smartest possible move. If the sole purpose of clothing was thermal efficiency, human history would be incredibly boring. Every culture would simply figure out the most effective hide or plant fiber for their climate, standardize the design, and never change it. But humans did the exact opposite. The moment we put clothes on, we overloaded them with meaning. In a cave in the Republic of Georgia, archaeologists discovered twisted plant fibers dating back 30,000 years. These weren't just practical threads. They had been intentionally dyed in multiple colors. Someone took perfectly functional material and decided it needed to be decorative. Across every ancient culture, clothing became a complex language. We used it to dictate who was a priest, who was a warrior, and who ruled the tribe. We designed absurd, highly specific garments solely for ceremonies, mourning, or burying the dead. We used fabrics to broadcast to the world whether we were dangerous, sacred, or available. As the Neolithic agricultural revolution took hold around 10,000 BCE, textiles like linen, wool, cotton, and silk became the very foundation of human civilization. Long before the Industrial Revolution, the textile industry financed massive empires, dictated global trade routes, and sparked devastating wars over raw materials. All of this incredible complexity grew from a hairless primate who figured out how to use a sliver of bone. So, why did we start wearing clothes? The answer is a chaotic, overlapping mix of biology, social hierarchy, and climate survival. It began as a rough shield against thorns and sun. It immediately morphed into a tool for social signaling and status. It transformed into an absolute survival necessity when the ice ages hit. And finally, it blossomed into an art form, a global industry, and a core pillar of human identity. You're participating in this exact same ritual right now. Whatever outfit you're currently wearing, you made both conscious and unconscious decisions about it this morning. You chose how to present your identity, your mood, and your status to the world, just like our ancestors did 150,000 years ago when they tied an ochre-stained hide around their waist. You are directly connected to them by the simple, everyday act of getting dressed. It's a remarkable legacy. Even if we do still spend our mornings staring into our closets, complaining that we have absolutely nothing to wear. Let me know in the comments if you had a time machine. Would you ever consider living in a society where everyone was completely naked? Drop your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next video.